A blind man stood at the crosswalk, chin outstretched, rainwater pooling around his worn shoes. Hundreds of cars sped past. Not a single person stopped. But Clara Bennett did what nobody else dared. She stepped off the curb, grabbed his trembling arm, and led him through the downpour while strangers barely glanced her way. That moment, just 87 seconds, was all it took to explode her ordinary life and put her at the center of a battle she never asked for. The next day, 5 attorneys in black suits pushed open the diner door and dropped a briefcase on the counter, changing everything with 6 words. You're the main beneficiary, Clara. She didn't know kindness could be a crime. She didn't know her small act would light up headlines and courtroom fights, that neighbors would gossip about her behind closed blinds. Who was Clara really? Was she a con artist, a saint, or just another nobody serving coffee for minimum wage? People whispered, but no one actually knew her, not even her brother, who saw her breaking just to keep food on the table. What made her risk her job and reputation for a stranger whose name she barely caught? And what could she possibly lose or gain by guiding a blind man when she already had nothing left to break? Every choice Clara made felt ordinary at the time. Scrubbing tables, counting quarters, worrying about rent, checking the clock. But those seconds at the crosswalk set off a war between blood and grace, between money and memory. Clara's manager threatened to dock her pay for leaving mid-shift. The local news spun wild stories, painting her as a gold digger before the will was read. Families that never noticed her presence suddenly talked about her as if she'd always been a threat. In less than 90 seconds, Clara's world turned from invisible to infamous, and nobody, least of all Clara herself, knew what was coming next. People ignored Thomas Cross for years, until Clara helped him. Then, they couldn't stop talking about her. But not a single person wondered why Thomas, with all his money and secrets, had chosen Clara over his own blood. The answer unleashed a storm none of them were ready for. If you want to see how an ordinary waitress stood up to millionaires, lawyers, and a system designed to crush people like her, subscribe. This channel tells stories where underdogs discover their hidden power and use it. Clara's alarm went off at 4:30 a.m. The sound cut through the dark like a knife. She reached over and silenced it before the second beep. Her body already knew the drill. The apartment was cold. November in Portland meant the radiator clanked but didn't heat. Clara pulled the blanket tighter for 5 more seconds. Just 5. Then she forced herself up. The bathroom mirror showed a woman who looked tired even after sleep. Lines creased the corners of her eyes. Her hair needed cutting, but salons cost $40 she didn't have. She splashed cold water on her face. The shock helped wake her up. Clara pulled on her uniform. White button-down shirt. Second one this week, because the first had a stain she couldn't scrub out. Black pants worn thin at the knees. Non-slip shoes with the sole peeling off on the left side. She glued it back twice already. It wouldn't last much longer. The kitchen was small enough that 3 steps covered it. Clara opened the fridge. Half a carton of milk. 2 eggs. Bread that would go stale by tomorrow. She grabbed the bread and made toast. No butter. Ate it dry while standing over the sink. Her phone buzzed. A text from her brother, Jamie. Can you cover my books this semester? Financial aid didn't come through. Clara stared at the screen. Her chest tightened. She typed back, how much? $340. She closed her eyes. The minimum payment on their parents' medical debt was due in 6 days. Same amount. She couldn't cover both. I'll figure it out. She hit send before she could think too hard about the math that didn't work. The bus stop was 3 blocks away. Clara walked fast, breath visible in the cold air. The street was empty except for a man sleeping in a doorway, covered in cardboard. She'd given him her leftover sandwich 2 days ago. He didn't remember. She didn't expect him to. The bus cost $2.50. Clara scanned her card and took a seat near the back. The ride was 23 minutes. She closed her eyes but didn't sleep, just counted numbers in her head. Rent was $1,100. Groceries ran $180 every 2 weeks if she was careful. Her paycheck was $1,640 after taxes, plus tips that averaged maybe $250 a week if she was lucky. The debt payment, Jamie's tuition, the broken window she'd covered with plastic because the landlord wouldn't fix it. The math never added up. It hadn't in 5 years. Not since the accident took her parents and left her with bills that felt like drowning. Clara reached Maple Street Diner at 5:50 a.m., 10 minutes early like always. The lights were off. She used her key and stepped inside. The smell hit immediately. Burnt coffee, grease from yesterday's fryers, cleaning solution that never quite masked the other smells. She flipped the lights on. The diner looked exactly like it had for 30 years. Red vinyl booths with cracks patched with duct tape. A jukebox in the corner that only played songs from the 70s. Fluorescent lights that hummed too loud. Linoleum floors worn down to the concrete in some spots. Clara started the coffee, filled the sugar dispensers, folded napkins around silverware. These tasks felt automatic now. Her hands knew what to do without her brain getting involved. By 6:30 a.m., the first customer walked through the door. Ralph, 72 years old, ordered 2 eggs over easy with rye toast every single morning. He'd been coming in since his wife died 3 years ago. Clara had learned not to ask how he was doing. He didn't want to talk. He just wanted his eggs and his coffee. Morning, Ralph. He nodded. Took his usual booth by the window. Clara brought him coffee without asking. Black. 2 cups before he finished eating. Thank you, he said quietly. You're welcome. That was their routine. Small, predictable, safe. More customers trickled in. Marcus arrived at 7:15. Construction worker. 3 kids at home. He always ordered oatmeal and coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu. Clara brought him extra toast and didn't charge for it. He never said anything. She never expected him to. But once his youngest daughter had drawn Clara a picture. Marcus had folded it up small and handed it to her without looking at her face. Clara still had it taped to her bathroom mirror. The morning rush hit at 7:30. 30 customers in 90 minutes. Orders shouted across the counter. Plates carried 3 at a time. Coffee refilled before cups went empty. Clara moved through the chaos like a dance she'd performed 1,000 times. Her manager, Doug, watched from the kitchen window. 46 years old. On 3 diners across Portland. Treated servers like machines that needed monitoring. Table 9's been waiting 5 minutes. I'm getting it now. You're getting it slow. Clara bit the inside of her cheek, carried the plates to table 9, smiled at the customers, asked if they needed anything else. They didn't look at her when they answered, just pointed at their coffee cups. That was the thing about serving tables. You were supposed to be invisible until someone needed something, then visible just long enough to deliver it, then invisible again. Clara had been invisible for a long time. She was good at it. At 9:30, the rush ended. The diner emptied except for a few regulars. Clara wiped down tables. Her lower back ached. Her feet throbbed in the broken shoes. She had 4 more hours on the shift. Then she'd go home, sleep for 3 hours, and come back for the dinner shift. That's when she noticed him. The old man sat in booth 7. Same booth he'd been sitting in every Tuesday and Thursday for as long as Clara could remember. White hair. Neat, but plain clothes. A cane resting against the seat beside him. Sunglasses, even though he was indoors. He ordered the same thing every time. Oatmeal with blueberries. Black coffee. He ate slowly, carefully. Never caused trouble. Never asked for much. Clara brought him his order. Here you go, sir. Thank you, he said. His voice was soft, polite. She turned to walk away. You're very kind, he added. Clara paused, looked back at him. He was smiling slightly. Just doing my job. No, he said. It's more than that. Clara didn't know what to say, so she just nodded and walked away. But something about the way he said it stuck with her, like he'd been watching, like he'd seen something she didn't think anyone noticed. She shook it off, got back to work. At 9:45, Clara glanced out the window. Rain was starting to fall, hard and cold. She watched people on the sidewalk pull their jackets tighter and walk faster. That's when she saw him again, the old man from booth 7. He was standing at the crosswalk outside, cane in hand, rain soaking through his coat. The light turned green. He didn't move. Cars sped past, honking, splashing water onto the curb. Clara watched, waited for someone to help him. A dozen people walked past. Not one of them stopped. Her chest tightened. Doug's voice cut through from the kitchen. Clara, you're still on the clock. She looked at the old man again. Still standing there. Still alone. Clara made a choice. Clara pushed through the diner door without grabbing her jacket. Rain hit her immediately, cold and sharp. She crossed the sidewalk in 6 quick steps. The old man's hand was shaking on his cane. Water dripped from his hair. "Sir?" Clara said. "Do you need help crossing?" He turned his head toward her voice. Relief washed over his face. "Yes, please. I can't tell when it's safe." Clara took his arm gently. His coat was expensive up close. Well made, but soaked through now. "Okay, we're going to wait for the light. Then I'll tell you when to walk." "Thank you." The light changed. Clara checked both ways. "Now, we're going." They stepped off the curb together. Clara matched his pace. Slow, but steady. Cars waited at the red light. Some drivers stared. Most didn't. They reached the other side in less than a minute. "You're all set," Clara said. The old man reached into his pocket, pulled out a $20 bill. "Please, take this." "No, sir. I don't need that." "You left your work. In the rain. For a stranger." "It's fine." "Really?" He pressed the bill toward her anyway. Clara gently pushed his hand back. "Keep it. I hope you stay dry." She turned and jogged back across the street. The light was already changing. She barely made it. Inside the diner, Doug was waiting, arms crossed. "You left mid-shift. Someone needed help. That's not your job. Your job is here." Clara's uniform was soaked. Water dripped onto the floor. "I'm sorry. It won't happen again." "It better not. I'm writing you up." Clara nodded, grabbed a towel from behind the counter, dried her face and arms. Her shirt clung to her skin. She'd be cold for the rest of the shift. But when she glanced out the window, the old man was gone, safely on his way. That made it worth it. The next Tuesday, Clara expected to see him in booth 7. He didn't show up. Thursday came. Still nothing. She told herself it didn't matter. People stopped coming to the diner all the time. Maybe he'd found a place closer to home. Maybe he'd moved. Maybe he just didn't like oatmeal anymore. But something felt wrong, like a note held too long. On Friday morning, 5 people walked through the diner door at 10:15 a.m. Clara noticed them immediately because they didn't fit. Expensive suits, leather briefcases, shoes that hadn't seen a scuff. They looked around the diner like they'd stepped into another world. Doug came out from a kitchen. "Can I help you?" The man in front spoke. 40-something, sharp jaw, cold eyes. "We're looking for Clara Bennett." Clara's pulse kicked up. She was wiping down a table near the back. She straightened slowly. "That's me." The man walked over. The others followed. They formed a half circle around her like they were closing off escape routes. "Miss Bennett, my name is Richard Langley. I'm an attorney with Cross and Morrison. These are my associates." Clara's throat went dry. "Am I in trouble?" "No, not at all." He set his briefcase on the table. "Open it. We're here regarding the estate of Thomas Edward Cross." The name meant nothing to her. "I don't know who that is." "You helped him cross the street 9 days ago. Outside this diner. In the rain." The old man. Clara's breath caught. "Is he okay?" Richard's expression didn't change. "Mr. Cross passed away on November 2nd. Heart failure." The air left Clara's lungs. She gripped the back of the chair. "I'm sorry. I didn't know." Mr. Cross left explicit instructions regarding his estate. "You are named as the primary beneficiary." Clara blinked. "What?" Richard pulled a thick stack of papers from a briefcase. Set them on the table. "You've inherited $8.3 million in liquid assets. A penthouse apartment in downtown Portland valued at $2.1 million. And controlling interest in the Cross Foundation, which manages an additional $12 million in charitable funds." The words didn't make sense. Clara stared at him, then at the papers, then back at him. "That's not possible." "I assure you it is." Mr. Cross was very clear. He revised his will 4 months ago. "Your name appears 17 times in the document." Doug stepped closer. "What the hell is going on?" Richard didn't look at him, kept his eyes on Clara. "Miss Bennett, you'll need to come to our office to sign paperwork and review the terms of the inheritance. There are conditions attached." "Conditions?" "Nothing unreasonable, but they must be reviewed in full." Clara's hands started shaking. She pressed them against the table. I don't understand. I didn't even know his name. I helped him cross the street. That's it. Mr. Cross had his reasons. He documented them extensively. One of the other attorneys pulled out an envelope. Cream-colored, expensive paper. Clara's name was written across the front in careful handwriting. He left this for you. Clara took the envelope. It felt heavy. She opened it slowly. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. Dear Clara, you don't know me, but I've known you for 5 years. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I sat in booth 7 and watched you. I watched you bring extra toast to Marcus without charging him. I watched you remember Ralph's coffee order before he sat down. I watched you leave quarters taped under tables for children to find. I watched you choose kindness when it cost you something. Most people don't do that anymore. Most people walk past blind men standing in the rain. You didn't. I have no children who understand the value of character. I have no family who would use this money for anything good. But you would. This is not charity. This is recognition. You've earned this through 1,000 small acts no one else bothered to notice. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Thomas. Clara read it twice, and a third time. Her vision blurred. This can't be real. It's very real, Richard said. But I need to warn you. Mr. Cross's family is contesting the will. His nephew, Jonathan Cross, has filed a legal challenge. They're claiming undue influence and diminished capacity. What does that mean? It means they're going to argue that you manipulated a vulnerable elderly man into giving you his fortune. Clara's stomach dropped. I barely spoke to him. I believe you, but you'll need to prove it. In court, against very expensive lawyers. The room tilted. Clara sat down hard in the nearest chair. Doug's voice came from somewhere far away. You need to leave. All of you. She's working. Actually, Richard said, she doesn't need to work here anymore. Miss Bennett is now worth over $20 million. The diner went silent. Every customer was staring. Clara felt their eyes like weight. She looked down at the letter in her hands. Thomas's handwriting. Careful and precise. You've earned this through 1,000 small acts no one else bothered to notice. But now everyone was noticing. And Clara didn't know if that was a gift or a curse. Clara didn't go back to work the next day, or the day after that. She called Doug and quit over the phone. He didn't argue. Just said, good luck with all that money, and hung up. The lawyers had given her an address. Cross and Morrison, downtown Portland, 15th floor. Clara took the bus, because she didn't know what else to do. Sitting in her apartment felt like drowning. The law office was nothing like Maple Street Diner. Glass walls, leather furniture. A receptionist who looked at Clara's worn jacket and frowned. I have an appointment with Richard Langley. The receptionist typed something. Your name? Clara Bennett. The frown disappeared, replaced by something closer to shock. Of course. Right this way, Miss Bennett. Richard met her in a conference room that overlooked the city. Windows stretched floor to ceiling. Clara had never been this high up before. Thank you for coming, Richard said. He gestured to a chair. Clara sat. The chair was more comfortable than her bed. Richard placed 3 boxes on the table. Cardboard, sealed with tape. These are Thomas Cross's personal effects. He requested you receive them. Letters, journals, photographs. He wanted you to understand why he chose you. Clara stared at the boxes. Can I take them home? Of course. But there's something else you need to know. Jonathan Cross held a press conference yesterday. He's claiming his uncle was senile, that you took advantage of him. The story's already on the news. Clara's chest tightened. I didn't. I know. But public opinion doesn't care about truth. It cares about narrative. And right now, Jonathan's narrative is winning. What do? You fight. Or you walk away. If you walk away, Jonathan inherits everything. The money, the foundation, all of it. Clara thought about Thomas's letter. You've earned this through 1,000 small acts no one else bothered to notice. I don't want to walk away. Then you need to be ready for war. Clara carried the boxes home on the bus. People stared. She kept her head down. Inside her apartment, she set the boxes on the kitchen table, stared at them for 10 minutes before she found the courage to open the first one. Letters. Dozens of them, all addressed to Clara, but never sent. She picked one at random. Dated 3 years ago. Dear Clara, today I watched you give your umbrella to a woman waiting for the bus. You walked home in the rain without it. You didn't ask for her name. You didn't ask for thanks. I don't think you realize how rare that is. Thomas had been watching her for years, writing about her like she mattered. Clara opened another letter, then another. Each one documented something small, something she'd forgotten or never thought twice about. You paid for the coffee of the man behind you in line. You stayed 20 minutes after your shift to help the new server learn to register. You gave your dinner break to Sarah so she could pick up her daughter from school. Thomas had noticed everything. The second box held journals, leather-bound, filled with neat handwriting. Clara opened one to a random page. June 14th. Clara's brother came to the diner today. He looked tired, stressed. She gave him money from her tip jar without hesitation. I watched her count what was left. $32 for a full day's work. She smiled anyway. Clara's throat closed. She remembered that day. Jamie had needed gas money to get to a job interview. She kept reading. Clara doesn't know I've had my lawyers investigate her background. I needed to be sure, but everything confirmed what I already knew. She's drowning in debt from her parents' medical bills. She works 70-hour weeks just to stay afloat, and still, she finds ways to give. She's exactly who I hoped existed. The third box held photographs. Clara lifting a child who dropped his toy. Clara walking an elderly woman to her car. Clara taping a quarter under a table while no one watched. Thomas had hired someone to document her, not to manipulate, but to prove. Clara's hands shook. This man had seen her, really seen her, when the rest of the world looked right through. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Is this Clara Bennett? A woman's voice. Sharp. Cold. Yes. This is Rebecca Thorne. I'm a reporter with the Portland Tribune. I'd like to ask you a few questions about Thomas Cross. I don't want to comment. So you're not denying that you befriended an elderly man in order to access his fortune? That's not what happened. Then what did happen, Clara? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you saw an opportunity and took it. Clara's pulse pounded in her ears. I helped him cross the street. That's all. And he left you $8 million. You expect people to believe that's normal? I don't expect anything. I'm just telling the truth. The truth is you're a waitress with $47,000 in debt. Thomas Cross was worth $23 million. That's motive, Clara. Clara hung up. Her hands were shaking so hard she dropped the phone. She didn't sleep that night. Just read letter after letter, journal entry after journal entry. Thomas's voice filled her apartment. Kind, thoughtful. November 1st. Tomorrow I'll revise my will one final time. I've made my decision. Clara Bennett will inherit everything. Not because she asked, but because she never would. My nephew Jonathan cares only about money. My daughter-in-law Victoria cares only about status. But Clara cares about people. That's the difference. The next morning, Clara's face was on the news. She saw it at the grocery store. The screen above the checkout aisle showed her employee photo from the diner. The headline read, "Waitress accused of manipulating dying millionaire." People in line turned to stare. Clara abandoned her cart and walked out. Her phone wouldn't stop ringing. Reporters, strangers, a lawyer representing Jonathan Cross, demanding she relinquish the inheritance immediately. Clara turned her phone off. That afternoon, someone knocked on her door. Clara looked through the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway, 50-something, gray suit, tired eyes. Clara opened the door halfway. "I'm not talking to reporters." "I'm not a reporter," the woman said. "My name is Angela Reeves. I'm an attorney. I worked with Thomas for 30 years. Did Richard send you?" "No, I came on my own." Angela paused, because Thomas asked me to, if things went the way he expected. Clara stepped back, let her in. Angela sat on the couch, looked around the small apartment without judgment. Thomas knew his family would fight this. He prepared for it, but he needed you to understand something first. What? He wasn't a perfect man. He made his money in real estate development. Some of those developments displaced families, low-income families, people like you. Clara's stomach turned. He knew that, Angela continued. It haunted him. That's why he created the foundation, to make amends. But his family hijacked it. They use it for tax breaks and publicity, not for the people it's supposed to help. Why are you telling me this? Because if you inherit the foundation, you'll have the power to change that, to actually help people, but only if you're willing to fight. Clara looked at the boxes on her table. Thomas's letters, his journals, his photographs. They're going to destroy me. Probably, Angela said. Jonathan has money and connections. He'll paint you as a villain. He'll drag your name through every courtroom and newspaper in the state. Then why should I do this? Angela met her eyes. Because Thomas believed you were strong enough. And because walking away means letting people like Jonathan win. Again, Clara was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "What do I need to do?" Angela smiled. "First, you fight back. And second, you let me help you." The lawsuit arrived 3 days later, hand-delivered by a process server who looked apologetic. Clara read it in her kitchen. Legal language she barely understood. But the core message was clear. Jonathan Cross was suing her for undue influence, claiming Thomas had been mentally incompetent when he revised his will. The document was 47 pages long. Angela came over that evening. She brought takeout and a highlighter. "Okay, let's go through this piece by piece." They sat at Clara's small table. Angela explained each section in plain English. Burden of proof, discovery, deposition. "They're going to ask you questions under oath," Angela said, "about every conversation you had with Thomas, every interaction. They'll try to twist your words. I barely talked to him. That's actually good. It's harder to prove manipulation if there's no evidence of manipulation." Clara's head hurt. "How long will this take?" "Months, maybe a year. Jonathan's lawyers will drag it out as long as possible. They're hoping you'll give up. I don't have a year's worth of money for lawyers." Angela set down her highlighter. "Thomas set aside funds for this. He knew you'd need help. There's $200,000 in a legal defense fund, just for you." Clara stared. He really thought of everything. He had 5 years to plan. The next morning, Clara woke up to her phone buzzing nonstop. She turned it back on to call her brother. 43 missed calls, 62 texts, most from numbers she didn't recognize. She opened one text at random. "Gold digger. You should be ashamed." Another one. "Hope you choke on that money." Clara deleted the messages, but more came in immediately. Someone had posted her address online. Angela called at 8 a.m. "Don't go outside. Jonathan's team leaked your information. There are protesters." Clara looked out her window. A small crowd had gathered on the sidewalk. Signs, cameras, angry faces. "What do I do?" "Stay inside. I'll handle it." But staying inside felt like hiding. And Clara had never been good at hiding. She thought about Thomas, about his letters. You choose kindness when it costs you something. This was costing her everything. A week later, Angela arranged a meeting with Jonathan Cross. "Why?" Clara asked. "Because sometimes you have to look your enemy in the eye." They met at a neutral location, a conference room in a hotel downtown. Jonathan arrived with 2 lawyers. Clara came with Angela. Jonathan was younger than Clara expected, mid-40s, expensive suit, watch that probably cost more than Clara's car. He looked at her like she was dirt. "Miss Bennett, Mr. Cross." They sat on opposite sides of the table. Jonathan's lawyer spoke first. "We're here to offer a settlement. My client is willing to pay you $500,000 if you relinquish all claims to the estate." Clara's breath caught. $500,000. Enough to pay off every debt. Enough to change her life. Angela leaned closer, whispered, "You don't have to answer now." But Clara already knew her answer. "No." Jonathan's expression darkened. "Excuse me." "I said no." "You're turning down $500,000? Your uncle wanted me to have this. I'm not giving up." Jonathan leaned forward. "You helped an old man cross the street. That doesn't make you family. Neither does sharing his blood." Clara shot back. The room went silent. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "You have no idea what you're up against. I will bury you. Then bury me." Angela touched Clara's arm. "We're done here." They stood, walked out. In the elevator, Angela smiled. That was brave. Or stupid. Maybe both. 2 weeks later, the press conference happened. Jonathan stood in front of cameras and microphones. Reporters packed the room. My uncle was a good man, Jonathan said. But in his final years, he became vulnerable, isolated. And Clara Bennett took advantage of that vulnerability. He held up a photograph. Clara helping Thomas across the street. This moment, this single act, was calculated. Miss Bennett saw an opportunity to gain access to a wealthy man, and she exploited it. The reporters shouted questions. Do you have proof? We have testimony from family members who witnessed my uncle's declining mental state. We have medical records showing early-stage dementia. And we have the fact that Miss Bennett, a stranger, somehow convinced him to disinherit his entire family. Clara watched the press conference from her apartment. Every channel was covering it. Her phone rang. Angela, don't react. Don't make a statement. Let me handle this. He's lying. I know, but the damage is done. Public opinion just shifted. Clara felt sick. That night, someone threw a brick through her window. The note tied to it said, thief. Clara called the police. They took a report, told her to install cameras. She couldn't afford cameras. Angela came over the next morning, helped her board up the window. You can move, Angela said. Thomas's penthouse is sitting empty. You inherited it. I don't belong there. You belong anywhere you choose to be. Clara thought about that. About belonging. About worth. If I move to his penthouse, people say I'm already spending his money. People are going to say terrible things no matter what you do. Clara swept up the glass. Her hands were shaking. I'm scared. Angela stopped working. Looked at her. Good. Fear means you understand the stakes. But don't let fear make your decisions. The deposition was scheduled for December 15th. Clara had 4 weeks to prepare. Angela drilled her every day. Practice questions. Mock interrogations. Why did you help Thomas that day? Because no one else was. Did you know he was wealthy? No. Did you expect anything in return? No. Then why did you refuse his $20 tip? Because I didn't help him for money. Angela nodded. Good. Stick to the truth. Don't elaborate. Don't get defensive. But Clara knew the truth didn't always matter. Not when someone had money and power and a reason to destroy you. She spent her nights reading Thomas's journals, trying to understand him, trying to find the strength he believed she had. December 3rd. I asked Clara what she wanted from life. She said, to be proud of who I am, not wealth, not status, just pride. I wish my own children had answered that way. Clara traced the words with her finger. Thomas had seen something in her, something even she didn't fully see. She wasn't going to let Jonathan take that away. On December 10th, Angela called with news. We found something in the foundation's financial records. What? Jonathan's been embezzling for 3 years. He's taken over $600,000. Clara's heart raced. Can we prove it? Working on it. But if we can, this changes everything. He's not fighting for inheritance. He's fighting to cover up a crime. For the first time in weeks, Clara felt something close to hope. What do? We dig deeper, and we get ready to hit back. This is exactly the kind of impossible choice that changes lives forever. If you love stories about ordinary people facing extraordinary decisions and refusing to back down, subscribe. You'll see more battles like this and how people like Clara survived them. Clara looked at the boarded-up window, the threatening messages still on her phone, the reporters who wouldn't leave her alone. She'd been raised to be kind, to be quiet, to make herself small. But Thomas had left her a gift, not just money that I'll issue, power. And Clara was finally ready to use it. The call came at 11:47 p.m. on December 14th, the night before Clara's deposition. Angela's voice was tight, controlled. We have a problem. Clara sat up in bed. What happened? The financial records, the ones showing Jonathan's embezzlement, they're gone. What do you mean gone? Someone accessed the foundation's database remotely, wiped the transaction history. We have nothing. Clara's chest went cold. How is that possible? Jonathan has resources, money, connections. He must have known we were close. What about backups? Deleted. All of them. Angela was quiet for a moment. Clara, without those records, we can't prove he's been stealing. And without that proof, tomorrow's deposition is going to be brutal. Clara pressed her palm against her forehead. So we lost. Not yet, but we're losing. After Angela hung up, Clara sat in the dark. Her apartment felt too small, too quiet. Everything Thomas had left her was slipping away. The deposition started at 9 a.m. Clara wore the only professional outfit she owned. A black blazer she bought at a thrift store. Dress pants that were slightly too big. She looked like she was playing dress up. Jonathan's lawyer looked like he'd been born in a courtroom. His name was Martin Sterling, 60 years old. Silver hair, eyes like a shark. Miss Bennett, let's start simple. How many times did you speak with Thomas Cross before he died? Clara glanced at Angela. Angela nodded. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe a dozen times. A dozen conversations over 5 years? Yes. And in those conversations, did Mr. Cross ever mention his wealth? No. Did he mention his family? No. Did he mention his will? No. Martin smiled. So you're telling me that Thomas Cross, a man worth $23 million, left you his entire estate after a dozen brief conversations? I didn't ask for any of it. But you accepted it. I haven't accepted anything yet. That's why we're here. Martin walked closer. Miss Bennett, isn't it true that you researched Thomas Cross online after your first interaction? Clara's stomach dropped. No. You never searched his name? No. I didn't even know his name until after he died. Martin pulled out a document, slid it across the table. This is a record from your internet service provider. It shows that on October 21st, 2 days after you helped Mr. Cross, someone using your IP address searched for Thomas Cross Portland and Thomas Cross net worth. Clara stared at the paper. Her hands went numb. That's not possible. Are you saying this document is falsified? I'm saying I didn't search for him. Then who did? Clara's mind raced. She lived alone. No one else used her computer, unless her brother. Jamie had come over that week. He used her laptop to apply for jobs. My brother might have, Clara said. He was using my computer. Martin raised an eyebrow. How convenient. Angela cut in. My client has answered your question. Move on. But the damage was done. Clara could see it in Martin's expression. He thought he'd caught her in a lie. The deposition lasted 6 hours. 6 hours of questions designed to make Clara look calculating, manipulative. By the time it ended, Clara felt hollowed out. That night, the story broke. Waitress Googled millionaire's net worth before befriending him. Clara's face was everywhere. News sites, social media, comment sections filled with hate. She planned this from the start. Disgusting gold digger. Thomas Cross's family deserves justice. Clara turned off her phone, but the damage was already done. Angela called from a blocked number. Clara almost didn't answer. I'm sorry, Angela said. I should have seen this coming. It doesn't matter. Yes, it does. They're painting you as a liar. We need to respond. How? Everything I say gets twisted. Angela was quiet. Then, Jonathan's team called. They're offering a new settlement. Clara's throat tightened. How much? $1 million. Tax-free. You sign a non-disclosure agreement and walk away. $1 million. More money than Clara had ever imagined. Enough to pay off her debts. Put Jamie through school. Start over somewhere new. If you take it, this ends, Angela said. No more depositions. No more press. No more death threats. Clara looked around her apartment. The boarded-up window. The stack of hate mail by the door. The life she used to have was already gone. What would you do? Clara asked. I can't answer that. Yes, you can. Angela sighed. Thomas spent 5 years planning this. He believed you were the only person who could carry his legacy forward. If you walk away, everything he built goes to people who don't deserve it. But what if I don't deserve it either? That's not for me to decide. After Angela hung up, Clara sat at her kitchen table, stared at Thomas's boxes. She hadn't opened them in days. Maybe she'd been wrong. Maybe she'd misunderstood his letters. Maybe kindness was enough. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jamie. People are saying terrible things about you. Are you okay? Clara typed back. I don't know. Do you want me to come over? No. I need to be alone. She opened one of Thomas's journals, flipped to a random page. August 22nd. Clara gave her lunch to a homeless woman today. I watched her go, hungry the rest of her shift. When another server asked why she did it, Clara said, because she needed it more than I did. That's the difference between Clara and people like my nephew. She sees need and responds. Jonathan sees opportunity and takes. Clara's eyes burned. She kept reading. If Clara is reading this, it means I'm gone. It also means she's facing resistance. Probably from Jonathan. Possibly from a public. Clara, listen to me. You are going to doubt yourself. You are going to wonder if you deserve this. You are going to be tempted to walk away. Don't. Not because of the money, but because walking away means letting people like Jonathan win. And people like Jonathan have been winning for too long. You didn't ask to be invisible. The world made you that way. But I saw you, and now you have the power to be seen. Use it. Clara read the words 3 times, felt them settle into her chest. She thought about the settlement. $1 million. Safety. Escape. Then she thought about Thomas sitting in booth 7, watching, documenting, believing. She picked up her phone, called Angela. I'm not taking a settlement. Angela exhaled. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The next morning, Clara went back to Maple Street Diner. She hadn't been there in weeks. The place looked exactly the same. Red vinyl booths, humming lights, the smell of burnt coffee. Doug was behind the counter. He looked up when she walked in. Surprise crossed his face. Clara. Hi, Doug. You here to rub your millions in my face? I'm here because I needed to remember something. Clara walked to booth 7, the booth where Thomas always sat. She ran her hand along the table. Doug came over. Look, I'm sorry about what I said. When you quit, I was out of line. It's fine. No, it's not. I treated you like crap for 3 years. You didn't deserve that. Clara looked at him, really looked at him. Why are you telling me this now? Because I read those articles about what you did for that old man. And I realized something. You were always doing stuff like that. Little things. I just never noticed. Clara felt her throat tighten. Thanks, Doug. She left before he could say anything else. Outside, the rain had started again. Clara stood at the crosswalk, the same one where she'd helped Thomas. She remembered his hand shaking on his cane, the way he'd smiled when she offered to help, the $20 bill she'd refused. That moment had changed everything, but not because of money, because she'd chosen to see someone when everyone else looked away. Clara stepped off the curb, walked through the rain, let it soak her jacket. She wasn't going to let Jonathan take that away from her. The court hearing was set for January 8th. Clara had 3 weeks to prepare. Angela worked around the clock, filed motions, gathered witnesses, built a case from fragments. We don't have the financial records, Angela said, but we have something better. What? Thomas's journals, his letters, 5 years of documentation showing his state of mind. That's our proof. The hearing was held in a downtown courthouse. High ceilings, dark wood, rows of seats packed with reporters and strangers. Clara sat at the plaintiff's table. Angela beside her. Across the aisle, Jonathan sat with Martin Sterling and 2 other lawyers. Jonathan looked confident, like he'd already won. The judge entered. Everyone stood. Be seated. Martin Sterling spoke first. Your Honor, this case is simple. Thomas Cross was a vulnerable elderly man suffering from cognitive decline. Miss Bennett exploited that vulnerability for financial gain. The judge looked at Clara. Miss Bennett, how do you respond? Angela stood. Your Honor, we have extensive evidence that Mr. Cross was of sound mind when he revised his will. We also have evidence that his decision was based on years of careful observation. I'll hear your evidence. Angela presented Thomas's journals first. Read passages aloud. Clara demonstrates consistent moral character in situations where she has nothing to gain. I have observed her for 5 years. This is not impulse. This is certainty. Martin objected. These are the writings of a man obsessed, not a man thinking clearly. Obsessed? Angela shot back. Or thoughtful. Mr. Cross documented his reasoning meticulously. That's the opposite of impulsive. The judge leaned forward. Continue. Angela called her first witness, a neurologist who treated Thomas. Dr. Harris, did you ever diagnose Thomas Cross with dementia? No. Did you observe any cognitive decline? Minor memory issues consistent with normal aging. Nothing that would impair decision-making. Martin cross-examined. But you didn't examine him in the months before his death, did you? No. So you can't say for certain that he was competent when he revised his will. I can say that there's no medical evidence suggesting he wasn't. The testimony went on for hours. Witnesses for both sides. Medical experts. Character witnesses. Then Angela called Clara to the stand. Clara's hands shook as she placed her palm on the Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? I do. Angela started gently. Clara, why did you help Thomas Cross that day? Because he needed help, and no one else was stopping. Did you know who he was? No. I didn't even know his name. Did you expect anything in return? No. I just wanted to make sure he got across safely. Martin stood for cross-examination. His smile was thin. Miss Bennett, you claim you didn't know Thomas Cross was wealthy, but you accepted an $8 million inheritance without question. I didn't accept it without question. That's why I'm here. You could have refused the inheritance entirely. I could have, but Thomas wanted me to have it. Walking away would dishonor his wishes. How convenient that his wishes align with your financial interests. Clara's jaw tightened. It's not about money. Then what is it about? It's about being seen. Thomas saw me when everyone else looked through me. He saw me working 2 shifts to survive. He saw me helping people who couldn't pay me back. He saw me living a life where kindness cost me everything. And I did it anyway. The courtroom went quiet. Clara kept going. You want to know why Thomas left me his money? Because I didn't ask for it. Because I helped him when it would have been easier to ignore him. Because I chose kindness over convenience. And because people like you don't understand that some things matter more than money. Martin's expression hardened. You're not answering the question. Yes, I am. You just don't like the answer. The judge intervened. That's enough. Miss Bennett, you may step down. Angela called one more witness. A woman named Helen Park, 74 years old, lived in the same building as Thomas. Mrs. Park, did you know Thomas Cross? For 20 years. We had coffee every Sunday. Did he ever mention Clara Bennett? All the time. He called her his proof. Proof of what? That good people still existed. He used to say, if Clara can stay kind in a world that punishes kindness, there's still hope. Martin tried to discredit her, but Helen didn't budge. Thomas wasn't confused. He was clear. He wanted Clara to have everything because she earned it through character, not blood. Closing arguments came next. Martin spoke first. Your Honor, this case is about protecting vulnerable individuals from exploitation. Miss Bennett may have helped Thomas Cross once, but that doesn't entitle her to his life savings. Then Angela stood. Your Honor, this case is about recognizing that family isn't just biology. Thomas Cross chose Clara Bennett because she embodied the values he wished his own family had. He documented that choice for 5 years. He prepared for legal challenges. He knew exactly what he was doing. Angela placed a letter on the judge's bench. This is Thomas Cross's final message, written 1 week before he died. I'd like to read it. The judge nodded. Angela read aloud. To whom it may concern, I am Thomas Edward Cross. I am 78 years old. I am of sound mind and body. I have chosen Clara Bennett as my heir because she represents the best of humanity. My family will contest this decision. They will claim I was manipulated. But the truth is simple. Clara never asked for anything. She simply gave. And that is worth more than money could ever measure. The courtroom was silent. The judge took off his glasses. I'll issue my ruling within 30 days. If you love watching justice get served to people who think money makes them untouchable, hit that subscribe button. This channel is built on these moments where character defeats power and the powerless finally win. The media circus exploded outside the courthouse. Reporters swarmed Clara, cameras flashing, microphones thrust forward. Clara, do you think you'll win? Clara, what will you do with the money? Clara, How do you respond to accusations that you're a fraud? Angela pushed through the crowd, got Clara to the car. Inside, Clara finally let herself breathe. How do you think it went? Clara asked. Angela smiled. I think you just won the case. How do you know? Because you spoke from the heart, and juries and judges respond to truth. 3 weeks later, the ruling came. Angela called Clara at 3 p.m. We won. Clara's knees went weak. What? The judge ruled in your favor. The will stands. You inherit everything. Clara sat down hard. What about Jonathan? The judge ordered an audit of the foundation. If we find evidence of embezzlement, Jonathan faces criminal charges. For the first time in months, Clara cried. Not from sadness, from relief. The news broke within hours. Waitress wins historic legal battle. Inherits $20 million estate. This time, the comments were different. She deserved it. Faith in humanity restored. This is what justice looks like. Clara read them from her apartment. The same apartment with the boarded-up window and cracked linoleum. Angela came over that evening with champagne and paperwork. You need to sign these. Bank transfers, property deeds, foundation control. Clara stared at the documents. Her name printed over and over. This doesn't feel real. It's real. You're officially a millionaire. Clara signed where Angela pointed. Each signature felt heavier than the last. When it was done, Angela raised her glass to Thomas and to. They drank. The champagne tasted like hope. The audit results came back 2 weeks later. Jonathan Cross had embezzled $847,000 from the foundation over 4 years. Fake invoices, shell companies, wire transfers to offshore accounts. He was arrested on February 3rd. Clara watched the footage on the news. Jonathan in handcuffs. Cameras everywhere. His face twisted with rage. She felt no satisfaction, just sadness that it had come to this. Victoria Cross Pemberton, Thomas's daughter-in-law, resigned from the foundation board, disappeared from public life. The foundation was Clara's now. The first thing Clara did was hire an entirely new board, people who actually cared about the foundation's mission. The second thing she did was restructure the grants program. I want to focus on medical debt, Clara told the new director. Families drowning in bills they can't pay, funeral costs, end-of-life care. That's a significant shift from the current model. That's the point. Within 3 months, the foundation had helped 42 families, cleared $1.2 million in medical debt, paid for 7 funerals. Clara read every application herself, saw her parents in each story, saw herself. Jamie visited in March. Your apartment still looks the same, he said. I know. You're a millionaire, Clara. You could live anywhere. I'm not ready to leave yet. Jamie sat on the couch, the same couch that sagged in the middle. Are you okay? Really? Clara thought about that. I think so. It's weird. Everything changed. But also, nothing did. You're still you. I'm trying to be. Jamie smiled. Thomas knew what he was doing. Yeah, I think he did. Angela called in April with news. The Portland Tribune wants to do a profile on you. Full feature. Your story your way. I don't know. Clara, this is your chance to control the narrative, to show people who you really are. Clara agreed. The interview took place at Maple Street Diner. Clara's choice. The reporter was young, kind eyes. She asked thoughtful questions. What's it like going from invisible to famous overnight? Uncomfortable, Clara said honestly. I'm not used to people caring what I think. Do you regret helping Thomas that day? Never. Even with everything that happened. I'd do it again. Why? Because it was the right thing to do, and that shouldn't change based on consequences. The article ran 2 weeks later. Front page. The headline. The waitress who proved kindness still matters. This time, when people recognized Clara on the street, they smiled. Clara finally moved out of her apartment in May. Not to Thomas's penthouse. That felt too big. Too much. Instead, she bought a small house near her old neighborhood. 3 bedrooms. A yard. Space for Jamie when he visited. She kept her old furniture. Added a few new pieces. Made it feel like home. The day she moved in, she stood in the empty living room and cried. Not from sadness. from something else. Gratitude, disbelief, relief. She'd survived. 6 months after the court ruling, Clara stood outside a community center in southeast Portland. The building was new, paid for by the foundation, built to serve families struggling with exactly what Clara had struggled with. The sign above the door read, Thomas Cross Memorial Center for Family Support. Inside, families met with financial counselors, grief support groups, legal aid volunteers, everything Clara wished had existed when her parents died. She walked through the halls, listened to conversations, saw hope on faces that had forgotten what hope looked like. A woman stopped her near the entrance. "Excuse me, are you Clara Bennett?" Clara nodded. The woman's eyes filled. "Your foundation paid off my husband's medical bills. $42,000. We were going to lose our house." Clara's throat tightened. "I'm glad we could help." "You didn't just help. You saved us." The woman took Clara's hand. "Thank you." Clara watched her walk away, felt the weight of Thomas's gift settle differently now. Not as a burden, as possibility. That evening, Clara returned to Maple Street Diner. She bought the building 3 months ago, gave Doug partial ownership, raised wages for all the servers, made it what it should have been all along. She sat in booth 7, ordered oatmeal with blueberries, black coffee. The server was new, young, nervous. "First week?" Clara asked. "How'd you know?" "I worked here for 3 years. You get a feel for it." The server smiled, brought Clara's order. Clara ate slowly, looked out the window at the crosswalk, where everything had changed. The rain was falling again, light but steady. A man stood at the crosswalk, elderly, cane in hand, looking uncertain. Clara watched, waited to see if someone would help. 3 people walked past. Clara set down her fork, stood, walked outside without grabbing her jacket. The rain was cold. The man's hand shook on his cane. "Sir, do you need help crossing?" He turned toward her voice, smiled with relief. "Yes, please. I can't see the signal." Clara took his arm. "I've got you." They waited for the light, then crossed together, slow and steady. On the other side, the man thanked her. "You're very kind." "Just helping," Clara said. "Not everyone does." "I know." Clara walked back across the street. The rain soaked through her shirt. She didn't mind. Inside the diner, the server brought her a towel. "That was nice of you." It was nothing. It wasn't nothing to him. Clara dried her face, thought about Thomas, about his letters, about 5 years of watching someone who thought they were invisible. She'd learned something Thomas had known all along. Kindness wasn't about the size of the gesture. It was about showing up, seeing people, choosing humanity over convenience. Money could build community centers, but it couldn't create compassion. That had to come from somewhere deeper. Clara finished her coffee, left a $100 tip for the nervous server. Outside, the rain had stopped. The crosswalk was empty now, but somewhere in the city, someone else would need help. Someone else would be standing alone, hoping another person would choose to see them. Clara had been invisible once. She remembered what that felt like. She wouldn't let money make her forget. Thomas had given her wealth, but the real inheritance was simpler than that. Permission to be seen, power to make others feel seen too. Clara walked home through wet streets, past people living ordinary lives, struggling, surviving, staying kind when the world made hard. She was one of them, would always be one of them. The difference now was that she had resources to help, and the rest of her life to use them. Thomas had believed ordinary people could be extraordinary. Clara was going to spend every day proving him right.